Welcome. My name is Malcolm Scott, and I'm a faculty member here at ACU. And we want to welcome you to Summit 2020. Blessed are the peacemakers. Today, our presenter is Jay Sheets, and the title of this session is Restoring Justice in the Education Arena. I'll turn it over to Jay Sheets now, and he can introduce himself and share his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. My name is Jay Sheets. I'm a supervisor of security and safety, school safety and security for Dallas ISD. And I'm here to talk to you about restorative practices in the educational setting. Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Sheets. I'm with the Dallas Independent School District, and I'm the school safety supervisor. And I'm here to talk to you about restorative practices today. As you can see on the screen, here's my contact. If you would like to contact me and get more information about what we do in Dallas ISD, there's my contact information. Email is the best way to get a hold of me. So let's jump into it. What is restorative practices? Restorative discipline is a relational approach to building school climate and addressing student behavior that fosters belonging over exclusion, social engagement over control, and meaningful accountability over punishment. A couple of things I want to point out real quick is in the educational system, what we've done is we've substituted punishment for accountability. And what we ultimately want from all of our students and staff and everyone we work with and everybody we encounter is the accountability to what they say that they're going to do and agreeing to how we're going to do it. And what we've done in education is we've looked at the consequence in whether that's ISS or detention or out of school suspension. We've substituted that punishment and that consequence in place of discipline and accountability. And we think that just because somebody has served time in ISS or somebody has served time in out of school suspension, that now they become accountable, which in fact, the only thing we've done is really alienate students by showing them and telling them that we really don't want them in class. So one of the mind shift changes is that we're gonna have to change is this idea that just because a student has served time does not mean that they're still going to be accountable to us. And how hard of a change is that? One thing that I'd like to do is just cross your arms and just cross your arms like these people in the photos. And now I want you to uncross them and cross them in a different way. Cross them the other way. How does that feel to you? And I'm guessing when I do this in person, I'm looking at some people and they're looking and going, how do I even do this? And they end up looking like they're just hugging themselves. And I really want you to feel that uncomfortableness and that uncomfortableness that you're feeling right now, and just hold on to that. Because if we can realize that if we feel uncomfortable, if we feel that uneasy about something, it's going to be hard to change. Now uncross that uncomfortable way and just cross your arms again one more time for me. Dr. Scott, I'm looking at you since you're my host. And I'm going to bet that most of you, when you cross your arms again, went back to the way it feels comfortable. That's human nature. And as we start down this road in a new way of thinking for discipline and interacting with our students, we really have to be conscious of that uncomfortableness and really getting into that zone. So that's just a little visual and feeling of what that really feels like. So what is a goal without a plan is just a wish. So what is our plan in Dallas ISD? We're focusing on 3 components of restorative practices. 1 is our relational agreements. 2 are micro-frequency connections. And 3 are community building circles. And I'll go into each of these here in just a moment. First, the relational agreements. What this is a social contract between the teacher and the students. And what we've asked our campus administrators to do as well is to have one of these relationship agreements with the staff as well. So it's a trickle down effect. The campus administrators create a social contract with the teachers so that they know how we're going to treat each other and how we're going to move forward throughout the year. And the teachers work with the students and create a social contract with the students so that we know how we're going to proceed, how we're going to treat each other as we go throughout the year. One of the things that I want to talk about that really I want to get out of the idea of this general idea of everybody has the same way of thinking and things. So before we get started on this relationship agreement, one of the biggest things in school, in classrooms, is people say, well, just treat me with respect. Well, that is a good statement. And a lot of people say, well, you know, the golden rule, treat me how I want to be treated. Well, there's a couple of things wrong with both of those things. Respect. Before we get to respect, I've got a question for you, Dr. Scott. So if you can answer for me, since we're in a virtual setting, I would like to know what beauty is to you. What is beautiful to Dr. Scott?
Pleasant, aesthetically pleasant, easy on the eyes. Beauty is love expressed in the physical realm. Just a couple of thoughts.
Excellent. What's beautiful to me is the sunrise. I love seeing the sunrise up in the morning, just the different color that the sky is, and just the freshness of the morning. That's beautiful to me. And those of you that are here at the summit, I want you to think about what beauty is to you. Now, my next question, Dr. Scott, is I want to know what is funny to you. What does funny mean to you?
Something that brings me humor. So you want me to give you like an example of what's funny?
Sure. An example or whatever you think is funny.
A good joke. It's funny to me. Watching my grandchildren try to navigate different things or tasks that they have. Seeing my oldest grandson, who's 14, operate a weed eater is funny to me.
Yes.
That's funny to me. You know, my wife doing different things around the house, particularly in the kitchen, can be hilarious. I do most of the cooking, so
Right.
but that's funny to me. Yeah.
Excellent. What I've always find funny, and I know people are going to judge me, and that's okay. I think it's funny when I see people trip. It doesn't matter if I see somebody trip or just have to skip a beat. That just tickles my heart. I always have to laugh. So if I ever see anyone here on the summit and I laugh at you because you trip, I apologize, but I'm just gonna laugh. Even whenever I trip, I find it hilarious.
No judgment.
So in both of those things, we've talked about beauty and we've talked about humor and what's funny to each of us. And we all have this different idea of what beauty is and what funny is. But yet when we talk about classroom and about respect, we all assume that we have the same idea of what respect is. And so when you bring up the word respect, you have to define what that looks like, because we're all professional people, we're all caring people, but respect looks different to each and every one of us. And I think that when we start having those conversations with our staff members as a campus principal or with our students in our classrooms, what I think is respectful may be totally different to somebody else. I grew up playing baseball, and I was a high school baseball coach for a while. And I found it very disrespectful for for anyone to wear a hat inside of a building. That's just something that doesn't, I find that disrespectful. So if I'm sitting in a classroom someplace and I'm a teacher and one of the students walks in for a hat, and I go ahead and I start attacking him and talking about how disrespectful he is, and I've never had that conversation with that student, he doesn't know I find that disrespectful to me. And so we can have that conversation and say, hey, when you come into my classroom, I need you to take your hat off, or whatever the case may be. But you have to have that conversation beforehand before you can start holding people accountable to what your expectations are. So we are all on the same page as what respect is. So this is what our social contract looks like. It's made up of 4 quadrants, and what we want the teachers to have conversations with is with how do students want to treat each other? And that goes in that first upper left quadrant. Next, we want the teacher to explain what respect and how they want to be treated by the students. So it's the teacher talking to the students about how they want to be treated. Next, and this is the most difficult thing for educators, is the students are telling the teacher how the students want to be treated. And I've done this for a long, long time. And if you go to almost every one of the social contracts and relationship agreements that we have around our district and around the state, the 2 main things are from the students, how the students want to be treated is don't yell at us and don't call us out in front of our friends. That's how students want to be treated. And as a teacher, I think that's how I want to be treated as well, right? I don't want the students to yell at me, and I don't want you to call me out in front of the class, right? So how do we do that? What are we going to do to work on that? And so in each quadrant, there's a list, and then student to facility. How are we going to treat the stuff in this classroom? Whether I'm a technology teacher, computer teacher, we need to talk about how we're going to treat the keyboards, how we're going to treat the computers. I know with this virtually, a lot of districts are going to one-to-one technology with their students. And how am I going to treat this piece of equipment that is from the school when I take it home? Am I, we just a relationship to the facility. How am I going to treat the desk? How am I going to treat the door? Am I going to kick the door open? Anything like that. So this is what our relationship agreement looks like. And here's one from one of our campuses here in Dallas ISD. Now you'll see little scribbles on the relationship agreement, and those are signatures. And every student comes in and they sign it, and that's the accountability piece for this. By signing this, it's a contract and saying that I've had a piece in creating this with my teacher and my fellow students, and I have agreed to be held accountable to these things. And that's the accountability piece. Now, the teacher signs this too. And so the students are really good at holding the teacher accountable to what they say they're going to do. They're very good at it. And again, that's one of the hard things for educators is educators feel like they're giving up power, but they're actually not giving up power. They're creating more power in their classroom for more people, if that makes sense. So one of the things, real quick, I want us to look at this one really fast. One of the things that I talk to the teachers when we do the training is how important this is for them to understand this is what the student needs from you. And if you look at that first one on the bottom left-hand corner, it says, do not hit us with objects. So a student in this teacher's class, and this was taken out of a first grade classroom, so a little 6 or 7 year old student said that they needed their teacher not to hit them with objects. I'm not saying that the kindergarten teacher hit them with objects, but there's been an adult authority figure in that student's life where they've been hit with an object. And teachers can react to different ways. If I react with, well, I've never done that. I've never done that. I've been teaching for 15 years. I'm not going to hit you. I can react that way. And that relationship with that student that needs that is automatically shut down. And not only that, but when you react to one student and you interact with one student, every other student in that room's relationship with you as the teacher is affected. So if I treat that student that way, Dr. Scott may not feel comfortable telling me what he needs in class because I treated that particular student a certain way. So I've just hurt my relationship with Dr. Scott too, because he doesn't feel like he can share because I shut this other student down. And that's not what we want. We want to be inclusionary. Next, here's the second component of what we do in Dallas ISD. One of the things that we talk about with restorative, and one of the things we've evolved to over the course of the last 5 years here in Dallas, is the fact that it's hard to restore something if something was never there. So you have to have that relationship first before you can restore something. So one of the things that we really work on every week, every day in every classroom is, what is our connection plan to our students? So if you look at these things, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, and 2 minutes are not a long time to take out of your day. So what is a 60-second relate break? It's similar to a brain break, but you're more intentional about asking a connection question. So the students turn and talk, and you can say, talk to the person to your right, talk to the person to your left, talk to the person diagonal to the right, in front of you, however you want to do it. But it's a specific question to get to know that student. Now, the drawback for this is that after you spend 60 seconds, I would share something about whatever the question is. I would share my answer, and then we would move on. The drawback is the whole class gets to hear only from me, and you only get to talk to, or you're only supposed to talk to, the student that you're interacting with. So the whole class is not getting to learn something about Jay Sheets. They're only getting to learn, only this person is getting to learn about Jay Sheets. So an example question: if school is out and students have left, teachers, if you could dispense a liquid other than water from the water fountains, what liquid would you choose for it to disperse each day? And there are a lot of great answers to these things that I will not share right now when I go and do these trainings with the teachers. So if I could choose anything to dispense after school when all the students have left, I would pick Dr. Pepper. I'm a big Dr. Pepper guy, and I love Dr. Pepper. So we get some very interesting answers from the teachers when we do this. So I would turn and talk for 30 seconds with my partner. They would let me know, and then we would move on after 60 seconds once we hear from the teacher. So again, that's a real quick connection. Next is a 90-second spark plan. And why we do this is because we are going to have an appropriate physical touch with somebody else. So a daily plan to interact positively with students. Teachers should greet students at the door each day with a quick and positive exchange. Teachers can also choose the 90-second spark to be student to student at the beginning of class. So what this looks like is I'm going to have everyone stand up. I'm going to give them the directions of, I want you to go around, I'm going to play this music, and I want you to give as many people as you can, without running, a funny face, an appropriate funny face for the next 90 seconds. Ready? Move around the room. And the students would move around the room, and they would make faces at each other. They would, however they would like to do it. But they're going to make a funny face with everyone in the classroom, or as many students as they can in 90 seconds. Last is a 2-minute connection. And it's a lot like what a circle is going to be, except it's going to be a very surface level question. It's not going to be too deep. It's going to be, there's not going to be a talking piece. You're going to pass your voice to the next person's voice whenever, or to the next person whenever you look at them. So the students should stand up and take the shape of the room, and there's no why questions at the end. So an example of some of these type questions: are you an Aggie or are you a Longhorn? Or if you have something else, share what you are with the group. Dr. Scott, you a Longhorn or an Aggie, or are you something else?
I'm an Aggie. No.
Excellent. And so what Dr. Scott would do after he says his answer is he would look at the person to his right so that that person knows that it's time for it's their time to share their answer, and so on all the way around the circle.
Dr. Sheets, one question I'm thinking about, because by design, if I understood you correctly, these short activities are all about kind of that central theme related to building relationship and building connection. And so is it your position and the assertion of restorative justice practices that we must be intentionally relational in terms of these practices?
Absolutely. You have to be intentional about building the connection. Teachers come into the classroom every day with a lesson plan of I'm going to teach you how to do quadratic equations. So there's a plan for that. There's a plan for how I'm going to talk to you about the Civil War. There's a plan of how I'm going to talk to you about biology and photosynthesis. Everybody comes into a plan with what they're going to teach them. And so many people think that because we share a common area for 9 months out of the year, that we automatically have a relationship. And we do, but we want to foster and grow that relationship more than just Dr. Scott coming into my classroom and sitting and being a student in my class. There should be a deeper connection. There should be a want from Dr. Scott to come into my classroom, to want to learn from me because of the relationship. The relationship shouldn't be because Dr. Scott has to learn from me. So the intentionality of fostering and growing that relationship is vital to how we're going to treat each other. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir, it did. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And so one of the things we're going to do with our relationship agreement is we're going to choose something, and again, it goes along with the micro frequencies, because as the teacher, I'm going to pick one thing that I'm going to work on for this week. And so let's say I've had a bad week. My truck had a flat tire, and I was coaching a football game and we got beat, or whatever the case may be, or my theater production, the costumes didn't come in on time, and so I'm frustrated. And I've had an outburst towards my students. And let's say I did yell this week, and I was just on edge more this week. And my students said, hey, can you work on not yelling at us so much next week? And absolutely, I'm sorry if I did. And that's one of the things teachers have to own, is if they do and have an outburst, they have to be able to apologize, because I've damaged the relationship because I said I'm going to treat you in a certain way and I didn't. And so I have to be able to apologize for that. So we're going to write a behavior goal. The teacher's going to write one, and the students as a class are going to have a behavior goal for that week, just as a specific, hey, this is how we said we were going to treat each other. And again, that's one of the micro frequencies of doing this every day. If I'm going to teach you quadratic equations, I'm not going to be able to do that if you don't know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. I can't teach you how to do those things without doing the small things first. And these micro frequencies are the small things. The key to successful learning is the ability to connect with your students. What is your plan to connect? And I think this goes back to your question, Dr. Scott, is what is you have to have a plan. Connections don't just happen that often. You have to have a plan to intentionally do it. And our last one, and this is one of the things that we've done in Dallas, is we've scaled back the circles. And we're not wanting our teachers to circle because we want them to focus and be hyper intentional in creating those daily connection plans. Everybody falls when they come to a training or they start talking, they talk about circles, and that is very powerful, and it's a powerful message to leave from a training, and you want to go back, and the teacher want to go back and do those things. But they have to focus on having the relationship before they circle. It's kind of like when my daughter was young, she's in second grade now, when she was, a baby, I wanted her to run up to me, right? But she was only able to crawl. Well, how can I expect her to run to me when I know she can only crawl? And so we stress that to the teachers. Right now, we just want you to crawl. I know you want to run, and everybody wants you to run, but I just need you to crawl. I need you to be intentional about building this connection. One of the things, because most of the trainings happen at the beginning of the school year, teachers are full of enthusiasm and engagement. And when I go to check on them in the end of October, 1st of November, or end of February, 1st of March, before they've had spring break, before Thanksgiving gets here, their engagement is down, their self-esteem is down, their excitedness is down, and it's because you're in the middle of the grind. And one of the first things that goes is these micro frequencies. And so I get to go in and say, hey, remember back in August and July, whenever you were really excited about doing this work, and you understood the importance of micro frequencies and doing this intentionally every day, where are we at now? It's October 31st and Halloween's coming, and November 1st is coming, and all the kids are coming hyped up on sugar. What's your plan to be connected to your students when they come in hyped up on sugar? So just stressing the micro frequency of daily. My wife likes flowers every day. I don't give her flowers every day, but I try and do something intentional every day for my wife so she knows that our relationship is important. The same thing translates to our students in our classroom. I hope that helps understand where we're at in Dallas ISD with regards to restorative practices and relationship building practices. Dr. Scott, do you have any questions?
Thank you so much for sharing about the restorative practices and your work there in Dallas AISD. If there was one particular takeaway as I'm trying to think about translational kinds of things, particularly with members of the summit who may be wanting to take some of this back to some of the work that they're doing in churches and other organizations, civic organizations, faith-based organizations, in building relationship or dealing with issues of tension and conflict and that sort of thing. What might be one final thought or takeaway that you would want us to leave this session with?
I think number one, there's a couple of things. Number one is really being intentional about the words that you use and the questions you ask people. If somebody says that they need something from you, is understanding why they need what they want. Being intentional to give them what they need, because there's a lot of things. I have a senior in high school as well, and there's a lot of things that I think he needs, and sometimes he just looks at me and says, Dad, I just need this, and it makes me have to take a step back and say, okay, I understand what you need. How can I help get that for you? How can I give you what you need? And then he allows me to tell, and then it's my choice on whether or not I do that, right? And it's his choice whether or not he sees that as an important part of the relationship. So I have an obligation to provide that for him, and then he gets to respond to how I provide it. Does that make sense? Dr. Scott, did that answer your question?
Yes, yes. I wrote down a couple of things, and I appreciate the piece and you said about being intentional about our words, and being very intentional about them, very purposeful about them, and to mean them, and to back them up with action, right? And that was kind of the last piece, and it was very interesting to me that you talked about the relationship with what I'm assuming is an older son, your son, who is in high school, maybe. I think that's what I heard, but
Yes.
to say that, you know, in those relationships, and again, the translational piece for me is, then how do we take this work, these practices into, whether it's community work, whether it's faith-based work, organizational work, or as you are doing in Dallas Dallas ISD, is within the school system, and being intentional about relationship, being intentional about the kinds of positive interaction and engagement that we have with each other, and recognizing that, you know, there are elements of power that exist, but flattening some of those hierarchies so that we are very genuine in our relationships, and that students recognize the meaningfulness of that as we do our work with them, as we teach them, as they learn, but also as we learn about them, and learn from them the kinds of things that we need to know to improve both the relationship, both the environment, the culture of the school, but ultimately that they might be their best selves and successful. And that success perhaps is measured by them graduating and getting good grades and graduating, or finishing their schooling. And so, no, I really appreciate all of your insights. I am just fascinated with restorative practices and restorative justice in general. And I'm just so glad that you were able to share, carve out some time. I'm so thankful that you were able to carve out some time to be with us, share your expertise and knowledge in this Summit 2020. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Scott. It's been a pleasure.